Okay, welcome to Reparations Conversations, the Taylor's Talk White Supremacy, Reparations, and the Church. Today we have two special guests with us, my friends Ms. RoAnne Elliott and Mr. Kwami Abdul-Bey.
Hello.
RoAnne is the leader of the Washington County Community Remembrance Project, an initiative of the Northwest Arkansas African American Heritage Association, working with the Equal Justice Initiative to memorialize Aaron, Anthony, and Randall, three victims of racial terror in Washington County in 1856. Kwami is the co-founder of the Arkansas Peace and Justice Memorial Movement, an initiative also working with the Equal Justice Initiative to memorialize the 492 plus victims of racial terror in Arkansas between 1877 in 1950. So thank you both for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yes, sir. So as I mentioned to you all previously, today we want to talk about reparations of truth. In their book, Reparations, Quan and Thompson write that the effect of white supremacy is best understood as the threefold theft of truth, wealth, and power. Theft of truth is achieved by two forces, romanticization and erasure. By romanticization, we mean that American history is told from white perspectives, and that episodes that honor white people are emphasized. By erasure, we mean that American history is not told from Black perspectives, and that episodes that dishonor white people are de-emphasized. An effect of this is the Black-white monument gap. EJI reports that there are almost 2,000 Confederate monuments in America and almost 50 in Arkansas today. While there are many monuments that honor the Confederacy, a society founded on white supremacy and the exploitation of Black people, there are relatively few monuments that honor the Black people who were exploited. So Quan and Thompson write that to repair truth, we must commit to name lies and tell the truth. So RoAnne and Kwami, I wanted to ask you all to tell our audience how you're working to name lies and tell the truth, and how folks can support your work.
Well, what I'd like to do first and foremost is, RoAnne, if you could take a moment to tell us about these three lives that you're getting ready to memorialize, because I find it interesting. I found a little bit about them, but I definitely like to know as much as I can.
Well, that is such an excellent question, and I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm so grateful to be involved in this conversation because it comes at a time when I just feel a little bit of an awakening about this whole idea. The theft of truth just fits so well with what I'm struggling with in this work with Aaron, Anthony, and Randall, the three men. Actually, what we believe that Anthony was actually a child, a teenager, because what we want to do is to bring their humanity to the fore. You know, when we talk about slavery, it's presented like, I always think of it as this amorphous mass of Black pain. But the truth is that there were the people were individual people, and that but that we don't hear, that their stories are erased, so they get treated like just kind of a mass. So Aaron, Anthony, and Randall were they were enslaved in Washington County by the family of James Boone, who was a prominent Washington County resident. He was a physician in town. His two adult sons were attorneys, prominent family, and they accused Aaron. Two of the men were owned by the Boones, and one was owned by the other was owned by a neighbor. Anyway, they were accused by the white family of murdering James Boone. James Boone was murdered. Long story short, there is a trial Randall is tried and found guilty on hearsay evidence, requested a second trial, was not given a second trial, although it's clear from the record that there was no evidence other than what people said, and there also is evidence that people were paid to testify. And the other two, Aaron and Anthony, were held in jail. One was acquitted and one was released without trial, but they were held in jail. And before they were released from jail, they were stolen by a white mob led by the two attorneys, the sons of James Monroe Boone. And this mob lynched the two. Randall was hanged by the state, and we consider it a state-sanctioned lynching because, you know, there was no evidence for the verdict. So that's, but here's where what I'm thinking about the theft of truth here, because a colleague in the project, Valandra, and I we were asked to write an article for Flashback, which is the Washington County Historical Society journal, about this case. And what we decided was we didn't want to repeat the case, which you can read about in the Arkansas Encyclopedia or whatever. We wanted to bring to light the humanity of these three individuals. So I naively start digging into things, thinking, you know, probably I'm not going to find a lot about these three individuals, but certainly some window into the life of enslaved people in Washington County in 1856. Well, think again. You know, that's I could not. What I found was a mountain of information about the white people who owned the men, who accused the men, who eventually killed the men. But very little. So you know, there's this feeling of anger and sadness that, now I make up a story where real life had been. You know, what is it that you do? So anyway, I thought I want to do, I just want people to be curious about the gaps.
Yes.
You know, as you read these accounts, and there are these huge gaps that if you are, you know, if you were educated in the United States, maybe you don't even recognize that there are gaps. It's just, you know, you've got a textbook, there's the story, and you go on your way. But I really would like to invite people to think critically when you read something, whether it's from the past or whether it's, you know, a current event that you're reading about. What is the narrative that's not being told there? What is the opposite narrative? You know, this, I just think this theft of truth is such a gargantuan crime, you know.
Yes, and it's multifaceted as well. You talk about the humanization. That's a theft of truth in and of itself, because we're all humans, but yet the historical record shows through these three gentlemen and the rest of the 492 victims of racialized terror here in Arkansas shows them as not humans, but as property. The theft of truth. You talked about the education system, where our education system is intentionally designed and tweaked to tell, like you said, a different narrative. And the multiplicity of narratives is what makes us great, because our relationships and our ability to navigate life, that's a story within itself. And it angers me, and I hear the frustration that you're talking about. It angers me to try to find these stories myself. How do you tell a story of a 16-year-old young man who was lynched because he told his white teacher that she was beautiful? and that's a case here in Pulaski County, but that's all we have, nothing else. So I'm right there with you, RoAnne. It's very frustrating. It's very infuriating, and at the same time, I want to find these stories, and I don't know how to do it and be true to the historical record.
Yeah, that is it's challenging, but it's also very rewarding in some ways, because
Yes.
even though I was not able to find information about enslaved people, much information about enslaved people. I mean, I found some stories that from the National Archives,
Mhm.
the interviews that were done, um, but those aren't reliable stories, you know.
Mhm.
So anyway, but what's rewarding is my own kind of the sharpening of my own critical thinking, because
Yes.
I know there's more.
Yes.
And so it's just this reminder for me at all times to look for the rest of the story. The story that's written down, there's probably some oral history.
Yes.
So go and find some people. And, so that kind of thing is, it's exciting and it's rewarding. The thing that is infuriating, I think, with this theft, when I think about one of the things I found over and over again, I started noticing this pattern in reading hard history or history where white people have done shameful things.
Mhm.
There is the overuse of the passive voice,
Yes.
so it's like the
Wow,
black
you
people.
just turned on a light bulb in my
I
head when you said that.
it's like the people, the black people were enslaved. They were treated badly. They were this, they were that. They were accused, they were lynched, without ever saying, who's the subject of the sentence here? Who did that? And I think, and I hear that, I can hear that in current day conversations with white people who are white allies, who can acknowledge that, yes, there has been a theft of truth. And they can acknowledge that without ever naming the thief, it's just, and I don't think that people even do it deliberately. It's just like, that's just, and that's the insidiousness of
Mhm.
this particular theft. So that's something. When I noticed that, I started thinking, okay, when I talk about these things, I'm always going to name, if it's something that I know that white people committed this crime, I am going to say that.
Yes.
And one of the things you notice when you start doing that is that it sounds unfriendly. It sounds confrontational. It sounds like you're looking for a fight. And not. I'm just trying to, what did you say? Name the lies and tell the truth. That's what I'm
Yes.
trying to do.
Yes. And
So,
the problem that I've had here in Arkansas is that uh, a lot of the prominent white people uh, that are in power now, they are intimately connected to these acts of violence and terror. I remember we had a meeting with Governor Asa Hutchinson, and in that meeting, he admitted that his own grandfather was a participant in a lynching, and he was aware of it. And I was like, okay, so well, I see why you guys don't want the truth to come out.
yeah, interesting. So what are you finding? What truths are you finding as you do your work, Kwami?
Well, one truth I want to ask you about and want to know if you are familiar. I had a professor from UA Fayetteville that I was speaking to about 3 weeks ago, and he was telling me how the three lives that you are prepared to memorialize coming up are connected to the Nelson Hatchet case.
Oh,
Are you familiar with that connection?
I don't think I'm familiar with the connection. I know a little bit from Michael Pierce about the Nelson Hackett story.
Mhm.
I guess you're going to have to tell me about the connection.
Well, they would talk about the white man that owned Nelson Hackett. Also, he either owned or was a relative of one of the owners of the gentleman that you are memorializing.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And I thought that that was an interesting connection in and of itself, and that allows for a uh, a fuller story to be told. So uh, definitely a conversation with Dr. Pierce, and I can't think of the doctor that I spoke with, but I'll look through my emails and I'll forward his
Okay.
information to you so that you can uh, talk to him, and maybe he can give you a bigger story, because he was also connecting it to the Native American lives that were also violated in the Washington County area around that time, where there was this prominent family, well-connected family, that were the terrorists of the county.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there were some, a few prominent families. I think one of the things that I heard as a child of the North and a person who, I lived my whole life in the North and my whole adult life in Minnesota. And when I retired and moved to Arkansas, and I had a story of Arkansas in my head from what I knew, what I had learned in the past. But when I came here and met and became friends with, made some white friends, one of the things that I heard repeatedly when I would tell them about, some of my friends in Minnesota thought there was something wrong with me when I said I'm going to down to Arkansas. I'm like, you're going where? Why? um, and that, just from old stories about Arkansas, and my new white friends would say, and multiple people said this to me, you're in a progressive area of the state. There is no racism here. White people actually, or if there is, it's very mild,
And that's like telling somebody you're mildly pregnant, right? Just a
And
little bit pregnant.
it's one of the things, when I was doing my research for the article, I was thinking about how this silence and the absent narratives and the erasures create the space for white innocence. And, you get this blanketing of comfort, and
Yes.
which creates a self, a community self concept
Hmm.
that is racism free, and everything's fine here. And that, that's one of the things that I thought, well, that's a direct connection, to that erasure that started happening a
Yes.
while ago, is that now it's really almost impossible for us to look at the truth right in the face. We just can't, it's just so hard to do, because who came up with these news stories of history? You often hear
Yes.
when we start, uh, how in school the history teacher says, well, we're going to cover such and such and such and such of history. And then at some point we started saying, we're going to uncover history. And so then you
Hmm.
have news stories that are actually old stories that never got told.
Yes.
And the established historians are like, no, you're making up stuff. It's just so hard to imagine that our treasured myths, the lies that we've all been taught, it's just hard to imagine for much of our population that there's another story, that there's another side. and that some of those things are outright lies, you know. And as a person who grew up internalizing some of those lies about Black people, about Black families being chaotic, Black men being dangerous, you know, all of those kinds of things, I took a lot of that in, as many
Mhm.
people did. And so I had to go through a deliberate process of unpacking that and unlearning that, you know. And that's a process that can, you know, I there were times when I felt ashamed that I had believed certain things. Like, why would I believe things when
Mhm.
I lived in a Black family, I lived in a Black community, and I saw a full range of things Black families did. Some, you
Mhm.
know, were so honorable and, you know, high achieving, and then others who were struggling, and all kinds of people in the middle, just like in a white neighborhood, you know. But
Mhm.
um, but yet I believed the messages that came to me, directly taught to me, you know, through school or you know, books or media or whatever, and the messages that came to me through the erasures, through the fact that, you know, where are those monuments to the wonderful Black people that did things? Where are, you know, the stories of honor, that everybody knows about? Not just some Black people know about them, but everybody gets taught all of this stuff all of the time. Those things weren't there, and those erasures are um, very instructive. You know, we
Mhm.
learn a lot from what isn't said
Oh,
also.
yes. I mean,
So,
you can talk about the whitewashing of history as well as an erasure, because uh, we're only told a very sanitized version of who Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was, and he ended his life uh, as a very uh, progressively militant mind who the night before he was assassinated, he was telling the Black community in Memphis to boycott and to withdraw your support from this white community that is has shown you that they do not love you. I think about my own entry into this whole remembrance um, uh, movement, and it's because I'm a descendant of one of those victims. Um, my grandmother's older brother, Lonnie Dixon, uh, he was falsely accused of murdering a young white girl here in Little Rock in 1927. And through the course of his kangaroo justice, where he was literally on trial for, I think it was less than 20 minutes, and convicted of murder and put to death uh, 2 months later on his 17th birthday. And it was during his uh, court proceedings where they tried to uh, liberate him from the jail to lynch him, and they found that he had been spirited away to Texarkana to be kept in safekeeping until his trial. That's when they went and lynched John Carter, who is known as the uh, last official lynching. They used to say in Arkansas, but it was actually in Pulaski County. And I think about my own family going through, just knowing uh, what happened, knowing the truth, and also knowing what the Arkansas Democrat and the Arkansas Gazette printed. So there was this life of shame that my grandmother went through, that my mother and my aunts and my uncles went through, And I did not learn about my Uncle Lonnie until I was a junior in sophomore. I was a sophomore in high school, going to Central High School when I first learned about it. And I learned about it, I came across it by accident. And when I went and talked to my grandmother about it, she just broke down in tears. I'd never in my life seen my grandmother cry. And when she cried like a baby. Uh, and she was just, he didn't do it. He didn't do it. Uh, and that trauma that I can tell you that I know that trauma being a descendant of a victim, but that trauma is, widespread throughout the Black community. And the evidence of that trauma is in every statistic that you can think of, that you can list. So when we start thinking about, reparations and uh, when and if reparations should happen, the first thing that I always think of is, because the good white people that you were just talking about in Northwest Arkansas, we have good white people in West Little Rock. In northern Little Rock, north of I-630, and those good white people will be the first to tell you that there's no need for reparations because they didn't do anything.
Mhm.
And I have to explain to them that it's not that you did something, it's that you benefit from what was done and what continues to be done. And I have to explain to them, because a lot of them play golf on Thursday afternoon, and I tell them, when you go to your golf game, you guys get handicaps. And what a handicap in a golf game does is it creates an equitable playing field for players of different advantages to all play in the same game. And uh, that's all reparations is meant to do, is to begin that process of an equitable playing field.
Mhm.
And so I get so annoyed uh, when uh, I hear people venomously arguing against reparations because they say, well, first and foremost, let me see your lineage. And if you're not a direct descendant, you're not getting a check. Well, nobody's asking for a check. We're asking for equitable society.
Mhm.
And an equitable society first comes from, as we're talking about, we have to shed light on this dark history that's being hidden from us, this dark history that upon the back of the victims of this dark history, you have modern society. And so it's very indicative that we continue in our work here in Arkansas, RoAnne, that we continue to shed light on these stories that have not been told and would not be told if we weren't here.
I agree.
Because it's these stories that uh, uh, create a more profound um, argument in favor of repairing what
Mhm.
has happened and what continues to happen, and uh, who has done XYZ and who continues to benefit from what has done. Like you talked about, that passive voice. That passive voice is there to hide the people who are currently benefiting.
Mhm. There you go. There's a Toni Morrison quote from an interview in which she was talking about how she works with erasures of history in her work. And the quote says, "Our past was appropriated. I
Mm,
am one of the people who has to reappropriate it."
Yes.
That is
Yes.
inspiring for me. Because I feel like that's what my, that's what I want my work to be about. Um, and it reminds me to take note of those gaps in the story, whether it's, like I said before, whether it's past or something that's going on now, and to ask the critical questions about the story that's being told, what's being said, who's telling it, what voices are amplified, and voices are muted or missing. And, it's about critical thinking, about asking questions that demand that the undiscussable uh,
Mm-hmm.
be discussed. And that, of course, can get you in trouble. Like I said before, it seems unfriendly,
Mm-hmm.
to say that white people did something shameful. You can be called unpatriotic and even un-American. But to me, that's all part of a reparations mindset,
Yes.
that you've got, I just feel like that I know that I'm thinking in a reparations kind of way when I confront the truth and when I just put it out there as, as respectfully as I can, but not so not politely,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's one of the reasons that when we started our project here in Washington County to venerate the three victims, Aaron, Anthony, and Randall, I wanted to make sure that our purpose wasn't, we didn't say that our purpose was to inform and educate people about it. It really isn't about that. It really is, having this memorial marker that stands mainly as remembrance and reverence,
Mm-hmm.
because three people were people and we want them to be remembered as people.
Yes.
And then also, though, as a site of conscience. So in this community, this marker stands here to acknowledge the unaddressed white harm that was perpetrated against these Black people, and to remind us to, name the lies and tell the truth. You can tell I like that phrase.
Indeed.
I like
Indeed.
that.
Indeed.
So, as the project leader, I told the group early on, I sat down and wrote out my leadership intentions, and I said that, we're going to work together in honesty and forthrightness. And what I wanted that to mean is that we are just going to put our fragilities right out there. We all have these spots where, some people in our group, I'll do anything to avoid somebody thinking that I have a racist thought in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And then other people saying, if she says that, well, now we know where she's, and it's just this, all that,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff. But I've encouraged the group when we sat down with these intentions to can we agree? Can we agree that we're going to bring this stuff to the table and we're going to talk about it, because we are talking about um, racism and racial terror and all of these difficult things, and we, being a group of white people and Black people together, have different relationships to history, have different relationships to white supremacy. It makes all kind of sense that we're going to come at this stuff differently. And please don't take your conversations out to the parking lot and say, well, did you hear what she said when I said, that kind of stuff. Like, let's put it on the table in the
Yes.
group and just understand that your fragilities and your vulnerabilities are just going to be there, and that the group is going to be there to support you, but we're not going to we're going to deal with it together. So, and that's been kind of a bumpy ride. I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
tell you that it's been a sort of smooth and we did it, we're doing it great, but there are but that's something that I really want. If we're talking about being truthful, we need to be truthful on that interpersonal level also, and understanding that, there are things bigger than our interpersonal concerns,
Yes.
and that make it worth it to go through this. So that is, I think that's sort of the shadow side of the work. The in the foreground is doing all the work about getting the monument in the ground, or the marker in the ground, and doing the essay contest and having our dedication ceremony and all of that. And then in the background is this: how do we do the work so that we're learning from the work?
Yes.
Is there a way to do this so that at the other end of it, we have some, we've contributed something and we've accepted something that is a little bit transformational, you know?
Indeed. It looks like we're both on the same journey, just in different counties.
Mhm.
And I really appreciate the work that you're doing. And I'm glad that we are comrades in this struggle here in Arkansas, because it gets lonely sometimes.
Yeah.
One thing that we've done here, because I really like the idea of truth telling, and we started a chapter here in Central Arkansas of an organization called Coming to the Table. And what we do with Coming to the Table is we actually allow these conversations to be had. So every other Thursday on Zoom for 90 minutes, we're having these discussions. And the beautiful thing is that we've been doing it for the last year, and the numbers have not dwindled. They actually slowly grow every other Thursday. So we know what that challenge is, and we're trying to work through it ourselves. And one thing that we always try to come to agreement with is that the goal is not for me or anybody else that's uh, Black to be some type of a spokesperson for the Black community, nor do we want you as a white person to be a spokesman for the white community. But we do want you to come with your two ears and your one mouth, which means you should listen twice as much as you talk, first of all. And second of all, the goal is not to create a truth telling from a standpoint where we're trying to elicit some type of an apology or some acknowledgement of accountability. The goal, that is part of the goal, but that's not the goal in and of itself. The goal is two prongs, so that being one prong, but the second and most important prong is to acknowledge that the past is present and the present is the future. So there's a continuum of time, and we can't move forward without doing our Sankofa. We have to look back to see what's forward.
Mhm, mhm.
So thank you for everything that you're doing in this Sankofa process. And we're going to continue working alongside you here in Arkansas to make this happen.
Well, I really appreciate the work that you guys are doing, and I want to be involved somehow with that.
Oh,
So,
yes. Well,
yeah.
well, I definitely give you my cell number. And, anytime you can call, and we'll give you an invitation to anything that we do. And we also would like to be present for the ceremony, because when you have your ceremony, that will be the first ceremony here in the state of Arkansas. And then 3 weeks later, we have our ceremony. So
Oh,
we want to see how it's done right so that we can mimic what you
oh,
do.
oh, I'm old.
Because we just started our essay contest this Monday. So
Great. Well, very good. Very good.
Well, RoAnne Kwami, let me interject there. Kwami, I don't think you want to give everybody in the audience your cell phone number, but I do think I'd ask that we alluded to the ceremony, RoAnne, next month. But for folks maybe who haven't seen your faces before, thanks for that, Kwami. Your cell phone in the chat. I don't know if we'll see that in the recording. For your sake, I hope not. But how can people support your work, RoAnne and Kwami, in the short term, RoAnne next month, and then perhaps in the medium to long term? Can both of you answer that question for us?
Go ahead, RoAnne.
I think, you know, our essay contest is going on right now, and it ends the 23rd of this month. And if there are people who are in contact with high school youth in Washington County, that can encourage them to go out to our website, and there under the education tab, there's a link to the contest, and to encourage students to participate in that. I think that's one of the main things that I have a big concern about. I want to be sure that we have plenty of students who take advantage of this scholarship opportunity, because it's very generous. So
up to $5,000.
so I would really appreciate anyone who hears this to let teachers know, and you know, youth group people know, let students know. Any high school student in a public school in Washington County can participate in that. And beyond that, I think you know, joining us on May 15th at Fayetteville Public Library, there will be COVID precautions set up in place, and that would be wonderful to have people there to support the students who will be recognized at that time, and to, you know, honor our 3 victims of racial terror.
We also would like for people that are connected with high school students in the Little Rock School District to definitely do the same, and have them reach out to us. Before I go any further, RoAnne, can you give the URL to your website? I don't believe you did.
Yes, it is WashingtonCountyRemembers.org. I'll put
All
it
right.
in the chat.
Okay, and our URL is apjmm.org. And if you go to that website within the next 48 hours, we will have our information for our essay contests up there. We actually will be having 3 different essay contests this calendar year in 3 different cities in Pulaski County. So we want to, this particular one is for the Little Rock School District, and then we have one for the North Little Rock School District, and then one for the Pulaski County / Jacksonville School District. So definitely do that, and definitely just check out our website. There's a plethora of information, and that you can learn more about the work that is not only being done here in Arkansas, but throughout the nation in this movement to memorialize these victims of racialized terror lynching. One thing that we are really happy about is last year, Roseanne Cash, Johnny Cash's daughter, reached out to us because she heard about the work that we were doing, and to let us know that she was in the process of writing some songs, and when the songs were released, that she would donate 100% of the proceeds to those songs to APJMM, and the record will be released on April the 9th. So we definitely want you to go to Roseanne Cash's website and to order one of those records that are they're doing the pre-ordering right now. The record she's selling for $15, and they're autographed, and 100% of the proceeds goes to APJMM, so that we can continue to do the work, because we're not just working in Pulaski County. We do have the Pulaski County Community Remembrance Project, just like Washington County. And there's a Hot Spring County Community Remembrance Project, Garland County, that Garland County is Hot Springs, yes. And then we got Craighead County, Jefferson County, and a couple other counties are in the process of coming on board and setting up their relationship with EJI. So we're in the beginning stages of this process, and we just definitely want to make sure that all 75 counties in the state of Arkansas, including Pulaski and Washington counties, have some type of remembrance mechanism that is going on in that county. We also have some legislation that we're working on with Senator Joyce Elliott that will be introduced on the floor sometime this week. And that legislation is to set up a Unified Arkansas Commission, which will be like a Truth and Reconciliation Commission for the state of Arkansas. So if you just stay in contact with us, go to the website. It has all of our telephone numbers and our email addresses, and you can stay in contact with what we're doing. You can sign up for our monthly newsletter that we try to send out the first Saturday of every month. And we also have a donation page where you can definitely send donations, because where primarily we are working on grants right now, but we work on grants as we can get them. And COVID-19 has dried up a lot of grant sources for us. So if you see, we're actually moving out of our office right now because we can no longer afford the lease. So if you want to definitely donate to our cause, definitely do that. But even more than that, come out and support the work that we're doing, not only in Pulaski County, but also what RoAnne is doing in Washington County, and what the other several other people are doing in the other counties. Show up and participate, and make your voice heard, and come to the table, and let's start having these discussions about what has happened, what is happening, and what will happen once we come together.
Excellent, thank you.
RoAnne and Kwami, thank you so much for your time today and for letting me be a fly on the wall in this conversation, but also just for the blessing that you two have been to me personally. You've been teachers for me. I'm from Pulaski County. I live in Washington County now, and you know, I'm a white person who is helped materially but hurt morally by white supremacy. And I think about a number of people. You know, Jesus said the truth sets us free, and James Baldwin talked about the madness of whiteness, and Ta-Nehisi Coates about the sickness of believing lies. And it's not good for anyone. It's comfortable for some of us, but it's not good for any of us. And so I'm so thankful for how you all have spoken the truth to me and to our community, because I believe that the truth sets us free. And without the truth, we can't heal. We can't get better or be better. And so I'm so thankful for you too. And I know that for folks who take the time to listen, they'll be blessed by you and your work. And we'll post links so that people can continue to get to know you too and follow your work. So thank you both for your time today. And for everybody listening, thank you for attending today's reparations conversation.